Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with Alex Designs. I'm your host, Alex Harris, and today we're talking with Tim Paige. How you doing, Tim?
What's going on, Alex? Doing awesome. How are you?
Perfect. Tim is the podcast producer for leadpages.net, and they just released a great new podcast called ConversionCast. To get started, I want to go through, you've created a whole bunch of different podcasts already. So I want to talk about the strategy that you used to launch the podcast, how to create great content, and then maybe some tips going forward for the future of the show. To get started, what did you think about when you first created the ConversionCast and how you were going to plan to actually launch it?
Well, this was a huge kind of combined effort because, we have an amazing team here at Lead Pages. So it took, I think it took a little over 4 months to finally launch this sucker. And a lot of strategy went into it. We worked together with the entire team, our copywriters and all that kind of stuff, just to really refine what we were going to do with the podcast. And I think one thing that we thought was really unique is that our launch, we treated it like the launch of a product or a launch of a business. And so everything was just really laid out to a T. We knew, exactly who our target market was. We knew exactly what we wanted it to sound like. We built out all the segments, and we just spent a whole lot of time making this really, I guess, professional podcast without being so professional that people fall asleep.
Yeah, now it's a 5-day-a-week podcast, and anybody who is in the space knows how much effort goes into that. So how many canned episodes did you have when you first got started?
So the plan was we were going to have a month's worth, and it turned out our response in terms of guests wanting to come on the show was so insane. We ended up launching, and we had 50 episodes ready to go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you also do, voiceover work for other people, and you've been a musician and a podcaster for a while. You do a lot of talking about how to create a good intro and outro. Can you give some tips on people who are maybe just getting started or want to make their podcast even better?
Yeah, the thing is, with the intro and outro, it's such a tool that people don't realize that it's not just there to be like, oh, we have to have bookends for the show, right? Like we need to go, hey, here's the show, and then the show's over. And that's kind of the way that a lot of people go about thinking about a podcast intro and outro. But really, they're designed to do a couple of things. So the intro is really designed to get somebody to listen on, right? I mean, most people, when they first find a podcast, they check out the description, they kind of see what it's about, and they go, I'll give it a shot. And then they listen to that intro, and if that intro sounds like it was recorded on, some garbage, laptop mic or something, and there's horrible elevator music playing in the background, then they're really likely to turn that show off. So with an intro, you want to remember what the goal is, and the goal is to get people to listen on to the next part of the show, which is you actually talking, right? And so when you're making an intro, you want to frame it with the idea that they listen, they go, wow, this appeals to me, and then they move on to the next part. But one thing I think people really it's not that they ignore, it's that they don't put enough effort into thinking about is the outro. I think the outro is the most valuable audio element that a podcast has other than the actual podcast itself. The outro is really where you're going to get your listeners to do a certain action that you want them to do. So let's say, for example, the goal of your show is to build your list, right? Well, at the end of your podcast, you're not going to focus on please give us ratings and reviews. You're not going to focus on go back to my website and check it out, leave blog comments. You're going to focus on the most important action, which is sign up for the list. But the thing about that is people aren't going to remember when they're out for a run listening to your podcast. They're not going to remember when they're sitting at their desk at work or they're driving in their car. They're not going to remember, oh, somebody asked me to go and sign up for their email list, because it's just not at the top of their priority list. What they will remember is if you go, hey, I've got this amazing tool that does X, Y, and Z that is going to radically change your business, that is going to radically help your fitness, that's going to radically do whatever it is that the podcast is designed to help them do. And you've got to get this. It's free, but you can only get it by going here. Now, when that person is done running, when they're done at work, when they get to their destination, they have to go, oh my gosh, I got to go to this website and go get that gift. And now you can communicate to that person over and over and over again. Just like we all know with marketing, with optimization, we want to have those people on our list. So with a podcast, it's kind of the most difficult thing for podcasters to do is to continue to communicate with people or to have any kind of a grasp on what's happening with those people. So with your outro, you drive them to a list, get them to sign up for the list, and that's how you do it.
I think you said some key things there. Creating that action that stays in their mind, I think is so key. You are creating this value in your content through the podcast, and you're really helping people solve problems, and you put that into the context of sign up for my list and I'll continue to help you solve those problems, so it keys into their brain, so they're more likely to go to that next action next. That's very good tip. So as you've built the launch strategy, I know that you guys incorporated your email campaigns of how to get ratings and reviews, but it was super impressive to see you guys get over 70 reviews basically within the first week. Do you want to talk about some of that strategy?
Yeah, we put a lot into that. And I'll kind of tell you some of the things that I think were really special that helped us out. One thing is, being completely honest, I mean, Lead Pages has a huge list. Right, we have a 60,000 person list. So it was really easy to mail to them and say, hey, we've got this podcast that's really tailored to people like you who are building businesses and want to be able to do a better job marketing and optimizing your conversion rate. So that was one thing that was helpful. Another thing that was helpful was a community we're both a part of, which is Podcasters Paradise. And everybody in that community is helping each other out, is rating and reviewing podcasts and that kind of stuff. So that was helpful. But one thing that I think that we did that was kind of unique was we used the comments as a way to provide value for other people while getting value in return, right? Because the thing that we always have to remember, and we're always keeping in mind, is people are always concerned with what's in it for me. And we all know that. We're all marketers. We've heard all that before. But there are times where I think that we forget that. Or maybe it's not that we forget it, but we can't find a way to give the customer or the listener or whatever something that's in it for them. So we said, how can we get what we want in this case, which was ratings and reviews? How can we get that and provide something in return for the listener? So what we decided to do was Clay Collins, who's one of the co-founders, I think you had him on your show, Clay Collins, myself, and another member of our team. In the last one, we had Kat, who's our head copywriter. So we had the three of us get on a Google Hangout, and we just reviewed a bunch of websites from people that left us reviews. And it turned out, we had this plan, we were going to do it all, it was going to be this one thing, and then that was how we were going to get it. It turned out that people went crazy with this. I mean, there are right now almost 80 websites that we have to review. And we don't want to just go, your headline needs to be changed to this, next one, right? We don't want to do that. So we're doing these really in-depth reviews of ways that people can change their website. And so the last one, it was a half hour, and we only got to review, I think it was 5 or 6 websites. And so we still have so many to go. So we're just going to keep this thing going. And so people can go to conversioncast.com/leave a review, and it's going to walk them through the steps. Go to iTunes, subscribe, leave us a rating and review. When you leave a review, leave your URL, and then we go ahead and review that website on a video. So you're getting conversion optimization advice from 3 people that are just in the marketing trenches every day, that are seeing all these successful websites that are working. So I think that was one of our kind of cool ways to generate ratings and reviews that I don't know of anybody else doing anything like that. So that was kind of our thing.
Well, I think Lead Pages has always been on cutting edge in doing things a lot differently than a lot of companies in general. And that leads me to my next question. With every great product or every great launch, every company has a unique value proposition. What is the unique value proposition for ConversionCast?
Yeah, so our unique value proposition is that we are the only podcast that's data-driven. So it's a data-driven marketing tactic every day. And the thing that I think is really super unique about it is that we're not just featuring people that are teaching marketing. I think a lot of podcasts and a lot of websites and blogs, and there's nothing wrong with this, but there's a lot of them out there that are featuring people that teach marketing. We wanted to feature people that are doing marketing, that most of them don't teach marketing. They're just in the trenches. They're working for companies like AWeber and Moz and Kissmetrics. They're doing the marketing for big companies. And so they come on our show and they share what they're doing in their businesses. And that's where I think we're different. And we had this other guy on our show that did a really good job, Alex Harris. He was really great too.
Well, I was super happy to hear of you guys releasing this show, because it's taken a while. It's literally taken years for people to kind of get it, that this stuff's important, that you just can't put up any web page anymore and expect people to just convert or generate leads. You know, it takes a lot of experience, trial and error, to really iterate and figure out what really works. And you guys showing people literally how to do it. I mean, I listen to your show. It is every day, so I listen to it every day, and it gives me a lot of ideas to test for myself, for my own sites and for my clients as well. So super actionable client content, and it's what I liked about it is that it's focused on results and not theory.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, here's a really funny thing that you just brought up is, you know, you said it's taken people a long time to realize that this is important for their business. The funny part is there are a lot of businesses right now that you would be blown away that still have no idea that this is important stuff. I mean, we've had, you know, I've reached out to a lot of people. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but which is awful for a marketer, I guess. But in this case, I mean, I think there are 15 people that have turned us down for podcast interviews because they don't keep track of their metrics, their marketing metrics, which blows my mind. And some of these, I won't say any names, but some of the companies would absolutely blow your mind that these massive companies aren't keeping track of their metrics. Like, I just imagine if they're at, you know, some of them are literally $500, $600 million a year companies. And I just imagine what they could do if they were keeping track and if they were optimizing their conversion rates and doing split tests. I mean, these are simple things that big companies aren't doing. So that's why we wanted to do this, because we wanted to bring this to every person, right? So you don't have to be a huge marketing organization. You can be a solopreneur. You could be a podcaster. You could be, you know, running a 10-person organization, whatever, and you can learn from this. And that's what's been awesome is we've got guys and gals from all over, all different walks of life, all different size of business that are saying, this is awesome. We never get to hear this stuff. And I love it. And I love that you're doing, you know, case studies like this where you dig deep with people from all over. I've watched a bunch of your interviews, and, you know, it's awesome that there are more podcasts and there are more interviews and blogs and stuff that are popping up like this. I agree.
Yeah. Results focused marketing, design, development, growth hacking, whatever you want to call it. It is all about measuring where you've been and where you're going. Because if you're not really creating that map to iterate, you're basically guessing. If you don't know what your metrics are, you don't know where they can actually, the potential is. And so you've made your content pretty unique and actionable. What would you say to the person who's maybe just getting started with their product launch or their podcast to really create that engaging content?
I would say to know your audience better than they know themselves. So I've always found that if you can take your audience member and you can define their pain better than they can even define it themselves, then it's easy to create content for them. So our mutual friend, John Lee Dumas, always has this thing where he defines his avatar better than anybody else, I think. I mean, he's got a name. He's got like the age he can picture. He can like, when he describes his avatar, it's unbelievable, right? I don't know if you've heard of, I'm sure you've heard him do it. And so for me, that was one thing that I've always done is really clearly define my avatar down to a person so that when I'm talking into the microphone, I'm not talking at my computer, right? I'm not talking at, you know, all of you people out there in the world. I'm talking to this person, right? Whoever that person is. And I've got that avatar defined for ConversionCast. I've got that avatar defined for Love Your Leap. We've got it clearly defined at Lead Pages, right? So you have that person defined. And so if you're just starting out, that I think comes before anything else. You don't need to create a product right away. You don't need to have great content right away. You need to have your avatar right away. And then everything you do after that is for that person. When you do that, then you're solving problems and you're actually contributing.
Yeah, one of the ways that I like to look at it is before I actually create a show or as I'm researching a person to interview, I try to figure out what value statements that the individual who's listening to it are going to get out of it ahead of time. If you kind of really think about what's in it for me ahead of time, you're able to really figure out what value you can provide up front and ensure that's really a better interview and actually will flow a lot better as well. So you've interviewed some really great guests, and I'm sure Clay's had a lot of reach in getting this because they are a pretty big company now. What have your favorite guests been so far?
That's hard to say. I mean, I've had so many, literally over 50 interviews, like I was mentioning. It's actually over 60 now. My favorite one just from a purely personal, selfish standpoint, not from a marketing standpoint, unfortunately, was I interviewed Robert Macchio, who played the Todd on the TV show Scrubs. So that was a really fun one. That was purely like on a whim. I reached out to him and asked him to come on because he's got a new app. So that episode hasn't come out yet, but he's promoting his app. And the thing that's unique about that interview is that it's something that 99.9 of us will never get to experience is promoting a product from the standpoint of a celebrity, right? Because we're mostly, I mean, no matter how you cut it, the biggest podcasters in the world, in our space are not really celebrities even, right? They're celebrities to us. We go, oh, I want to hang out with that person and learn from them. But Robert Macchio is a celebrity on a worldwide scale, to millions and millions and millions and millions of people. So that's I think really unique. That was fun. But there have been so many really fun ones. We had Bounce Exchange on the show, and they have a really cool software. I'm sure you're familiar with Bounce Exchange. And it was the first interview where I really had a disagreement point with the guests. And it wasn't an argument, but we had such an awesome discussion at one point where they had a firm feeling about something. We had a firm feeling about something. And we kind of agreed to disagree. It made for an awesome interview, and it gave people such incentive to test, right? Because they felt so strongly in their data that they were able to get X. And we felt so strongly in our data, we were able to get Y. And so now if you listen to that, you go, oh man, we should test this for ourselves and see what it's going to get for us. So that one was really fun. But we do, our whole team listens to ConversionCast every single episode. And when we have our meetings, we actually discuss something that we took away from an episode of ConversionCast. So it's really hard to say favorites, but those are two that kind of stick out for me for sure.
Well, they say the best way to learn anything is to teach it. And, I know you don't have a very long history of marketing, but you must be learning a ton about conversion and lead generation these days.
Yeah, it's funny. It's so different because I'm sorry, I cut you off. Like I have a long background in sales, and literally since I could work, I've been in some form of sales, and it's amazing how much of that translates, but it's amazing how much doesn't too, because sales is such a high touch, like, one-to-one, face-to-face environment, whereas this is a one-to-many environment. And I think if you can find ways to kind of take the one-to-one feeling and bring it to a one-to-many perspective, and you can begin to optimize that way, I think that's an awesome way to do things.
Yeah, it's a form of communication, whether it's through data, design, or marketing. You're communicating just like you would in sales, but you may not be necessarily talking to that individual, but you're doing it through the creative and so forth. So what would be some maybe some actionable tips that people can use to do conversion optimization or lead generation for their own podcasts?
For their own podcasts. Okay. Well, the one thing would be the outro for sure. I think that's key. Another thing is that as podcasters, we tend to do something and then get into that mode, right? So we make a podcast, we have a certain style, and then we go, well, if I change it, like my audience isn't going to like it. I had an entire podcast that I rebranded, changed completely, stayed with the same audience, had the same subscribers. I saw my subscribers went down by maybe 100. My downloads go down by maybe 100 per episode, but my engagement went through the roof. I was seeing comments. I was seeing my opt-ins literally went from maybe 10 a day to around 80 a day from just making that change and getting more focused. So I think the main thing is to be constantly testing, constantly talking to your audience and figuring out what they want so that you can then move forward, try something. If it doesn't work, that's okay. People are actually pretty forgiving as long as you're trying to provide them the most value possible.
Yeah, that's definitely a consistency that we hear with everybody. It's that feedback loop. How quickly you can get feedback and iterate to make changes, the sooner you're going to have more results going forward. And now I see that you're also doing webinars for lead pages as well. How's that experience going, and what have you learned, or any tips for lead pages in general?
Sure. I mean, for webinars, it's been awesome. I used to do presentations, sales presentations and training seminars and stuff like that in various different jobs and businesses I've been involved with. So this has been cool. I've never done a webinar up until recently. So The experience is entirely different, but I feel like it's the same. You know, I'm talking to the internet, but again, these are people that are sitting in front of their computers, maybe engaged, maybe not. And my job is to make them engaged so that they make a change in their life and make a change in their business. So it's been a lot of fun. I would say that no matter what business you're in, do webinars. There are so many reasons. I mean, even if you eliminate the sales part of it, let's say you've got a podcast right now, and your podcast is about wooden boats. I love that wooden boats example. Everybody uses it. And so you've got a podcast about building wooden boats, right? So why would you do a webinar then? Well, first off, you might not have a product. So webinars provide product creation opportunities, right? Because you can go and you can have your audience there and just go Q&A, ask me anything. And you get on a webinar, you invite, and there's 20 people there. 20 people that absolutely love what you're doing are now asking you questions. And you're going, oh, people are really asking this over and over and asking this over and over. And you can go, hey, what could I create for you that would make your life easier? What could I create for you that would help you in your journey to building a better wooden boat, right? I mean, it's so awesome. And beyond all that, let's talk about conversion for a minute. Webinars, seriously, right now, if you go into the back end of lead pages and you sort all by conversion rate, it's this awesome feature we have. You can sort all of our templates by conversion rate. You hit sort by conversion rate. Right now, 10 of the top 12 converting templates are webinar registration pages in terms of opt-ins. So webinar registration pages will build your list faster than any other kind of page. And so I tell everybody now, do webinars. You have to do webinars. I don't care what you're doing. And you can even use webinars to pre-sell stuff, right? So you get people excited, you send them to a landing page, they buy, and then you build the product and deliver it to them. So webinars are just awesome. I love them.
Yeah, absolutely. As John said, it's the year of the webinar.
It is definitely the year of the webinar.
Webinars on fire. So let's wrap up. Looking back at your strategy and how you guys have launched ConversionCast, would you done anything differently, or maybe some advice for people who are just getting started?
Yeah, it's funny because there's one thing and one thing only that I think it would have done differently. I mean, there's things that we're iterating. Like I'm getting in a lot of interviews, I'll be getting more specific on certain aspects that I haven't been focusing on before. I think there's a point in our podcast that they get a little general, and I want them to stay really specific. So I'm going to be working on that. We're always changing and iterating. But what I would go back and change is we had a launch week plan, right? So we had the podcast came out on a Wednesday. And so we had this plan for Monday, for Tuesday, and Wednesday for our whole content schedule. We had this big, giant thing planned that we were going to do. Clay and I were going to do like this hangout and stuff like that, which we're still doing, by the way. But we had it all scheduled for 3 days. So it was like we're going to do X thing on day 1, Y thing on day 2, and Z thing on day 3. And it was too much, right? It gave people too much to think about, too much to do. And so it was literally Monday morning, and we went, oh man, there's way too much to do this week. Let's just move everything and spread it out. And let's focus now on go to iTunes, check out the podcast. It's awesome on its own. It's going to provide enough value on its own. All the other stuff will add in the back end. So if I could take this and put it into an actionable morsel, it's that when you're trying to do something, whether it's a launch or you know, whatever it is, focus on one thing that you want to get out of it and then drive everything to that. Screw all the other stuff. It's not important. Focus on one thing and make that happen. It's the same thing with split testing, right? Split test one tiny thing. Don't change 10 things. Change one thing and iterate later.
Yep. Because you're not really sure what people didn't like or what did like until you kind of iterate in the right steps. That's actually a great point. So let's close by telling people how they can learn more about you and ConversionCast.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So ConversionCast.com is the website. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on actually a new thing that I'll promote for them a little bit. It's called Swell. If you haven't checked it out, if you love Pandora, this is like Pandora for podcasts. It's like it's Stitcher-esque, but it's a little different, and I'm loving it. So you can check us out, conversioncast.com/iTunes/Stitcher/Swell, whatever you want to do. That's a great place to go. And if you are doing any kind of marketing, you got to try lead pages seriously. And I know, Alex, you love lead pages. It's leadpages.net. It is awesome. And people are just getting awesome results. We're getting awesome results, like 50-60% opt-in rates for a brand new podcast, which is amazing. So those would be two good places. And if you have a podcast and you want to get an intro and outro done, it's just timthepage.com. It's ugly right now, but I'm working on it, so bear with me.
Yeah, well, you have to make it look good like ConversionCast. The design really came out really nice.
The designer for that project is unbelievable. Yeah, so she does a great job.
Great. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with Alex Designs. Please remember to subscribe to all of the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.